didn't exist when I was a child. I was already in my 20s when this stuff came out. But oh yeah, I went to see the first movie in the theater and absolutely loved it. I own it. I've watched it a million times. I still, for me, the Scorpion Johnny Cage fight and then the Reptile Liu Kang fight are two of the coolest things I ever saw in a movie. Love those. And then the second one, I saw that in the theater too, and not as big a fan. And it's unfortunate because they did bring in some really cool characters. The fact that they brought in Jax, the fact that they brought in the Lin Kuei, the fact that Smoke was in it, was just really cool. But the tone of it had shifted, so it was a little more kind of almost, I don't know, Power Rangery. It was a little more kind of kid centered, where the first movie still had, it still had that game thing, but it also just, man, it was, the fight scenes were so well done, and just really enjoyed the storyline. And because obviously it was straight out of the game. It was the storyline of the game. So, but the first one's definitely one I go back to plenty of times. And, I'd already played the games, but it was my cousin actually introduced me. I think the MK2 was the first one that I actually played. And I still have and listen to on a regular basis the CD from the Immortals, which is that hard house techno album of Mortal Kombat that was based off the first game, that has obviously, the big Mortal Kombat theme in it, but it's got themes for every one of the characters. I still listen to that CD to this day, and I really love it. I mean, that's some obscure MK stuff right there.
Obscure MK stuff. Dave, I suppose, as you're aware, Mortal Kombat, a big fan base all over the world. It's not just confined to the US. This is massive in Asia, massive in Europe, massive in South Africa, in Africa, South America. I suppose recently I saw something like 150 million copies recently of the game sold worldwide in the last 2 or 3 years. So it's a fan base that's growing all the time. It's a case of where there's a new fan base that wasn't around 20 years ago, are really immersing themselves with Mortal Kombat. So it's probably a franchise that has stood the test of time and is still growing at a rapid rate.
Oh, for sure. And I think, just to play directly into what you just said about standing the test of time, it absolutely has. And I think it's just because I feel like they've really tried to up the ante with every new iteration of the game, particularly. And if you look at what they did with MK11, that whole storyline, I mean, there's a really well thought out and vivid storyline to follow there, with a lot of details and interactions, and the fact that you have kind of the 3 different versions of some of the primary fighter characters from different time periods, the fact that you've got Kronika and Garrus, manipulating time. And I mean, it's really interesting, particularly because you get to play them off of each other. And I think that was the thing when we were working on that, as a fan, I was just so struck by how intricate and deep the story was, and just how cool that was, and I just thought, man, this is really bringing it here as far as depth of story and fleshing out these characters and kind of looking at their histories and their futures and all that. So I think that's part of the reason why, is that I don't feel like they've ever just sat back and said, it's Mortal Kombat. We slap Mortal Kombat on it, people will buy it. I feel like they're really motivated every time, that they really do want to push it and give something to the fans that they're going to react to and they're going to enjoy.
Yeah, and you mentioned the cutscenes in terms of Mortal Kombat 11. In terms of, you put that out in a cinema, just alone, cutscenes, put it all together, animation movie. I saw there on YouTube there in terms of you can actually watch all the animated scenes in terms of a movie. It's something that's
for sure
3.5 hours long and something of millions of sort of views. If you never actually played the fighting, or you could actually sit down and watch it and be enthralled in terms of an animation sort of movie as well. So the depth in terms of creating a sort of a film within a game as well, that's what really they have done now with these recent editions of Mortal Kombat.
Absolutely.
Mortal Kombat 11.
Yeah, for sure. And I think just because the characters and the story is so interesting, that it lends itself to that. And you really see that in games in general. I mean, I work on a lot of games, and I'm constantly amazed with any new thing I work on, just the level of the writing and the characterization and the fact that it really is, in so many cases, it's like working on a film that you get to control. That's kind of where gaming has gotten to. And you know, certainly I think with MK11, Mortal Kombat is absolutely part of that whole wave of really cinematic gaming.
And I suppose
it looks great too, so.
Yeah. And I suppose, Dave, you mentioned there that you played the character Gerax in voice character Gerax in Mortal Kombat 11. You also voiced a sort of a historic sort of character in terms of the Mortal Kombat circles, been around now for sort of 20 years. One of the sort of original sort of characters when we think of Liu Kang, when we think of Shang Tsung, Sonya, Johnny Cage, Scorpion, and sort of Reptile and Sub-Zero. The next stuff after that is Cyrax and Sektor.
Absolutely.
And you played the character Sektor. I suppose 20 years on, Sektor is probably known throughout the Mortal Kombat universe, the guy who shoots rockets out of his stomach, as the saying goes. How did the opportunity come about for you to get cast as the voiceover actor of Sektor? Was this something that your agent brought you as a script? And obviously, you're probably aware of that character, I suppose, before you got the job. You probably weren't aware of the Gerax character because that's a new recent addition to the game.
Yeah, it was. Well, it was interesting because Gerax was a new character. So for me, as a longtime hardcore MK fan, to get to not only be a player character, but to introduce a brand new character was really exciting. And Gerax is a cool character too. But the funny thing was, so typically with games, you'll end up playing, you can play up to 3 characters. That's the way the contract works. So even if you're playing a lead, sometimes you'll play a couple of ancillary characters or supporting characters. And in this case, you know, I got the booking to go work on Gerax at Warner Brothers, and or to work on Gerax. But when I got there, I saw that I had 2 characters that I was lined up to do. It was Gerax and Sektor, and the director on it is a very dear friend of mine I've worked with a million times, Amanda Wyatt. And I said, I'm like, whoa. Sektor, as in like Lin Kuei Robo Ninja Sektor? She's like, yeah, you're playing Sektor too. And I was like, what? What do you mean I'm playing Sektor? And I said, Sektor is my favorite character from the entire MK universe, and I get to be him? And she was like, yes, you do. And she told me, I don't know who else it was, but she said that I was the second actor on that game that had come in playing a character that was our personal favorite character from that universe. So that was, I mean, I was over the moon for that. I wish that he had been playable, but just just getting to be him at all. And you know, if you look at those cutscenes, that really cool fight scene between him and Cyrax, and it just, you know, it's classic stuff.